Hello and welcome to another standard gameplay video on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're taking a look at an updated version of Esper Legends, already a popular deck on the ladder, but with the addition of some of the cards from March of the Machine, I think it takes a deck over the top with the addition of Rona, especially a 2-mana 1/3 legend, saying whenever we cast a legendary spell, untap Rona, and that's very useful since we can tap Rona to draw a card and then discard a card. So if we chain together a bunch of legendaries, we can quickly sculpt the perfect hand. And then once we're out of spells in hand, we can always pay 5 and a Phyrexian black mana to transform Rona into a 5/5 trampler that the opponent is not going to want to damage, otherwise we get to make them discard a card at random from their hand and cast it for free, or in the case of a land, play it for free. Then we also have 2 copies of the Raven Man, which synergize incredibly well with Rona, since we can easily discard a card both in our turn as well as the opponent's turn to make 2 bird tokens per turn cycle. Thanks to the Raven Man, can also maybe activate it for 4 mana to make the opponent discard, but for the most part we're going to be enabling the Raven Man by discarding cards ourselves with Rona. We've got 2 copies of the Clever Conductor, which we'll get to in a second. Of course, Raffine, another staple in this deck, which helps us connive to draw and discard, and that will also enable the Raven Man. And we even have some lands that can enable Raven Man. We can potentially cycle Raffine's Tower, and also the channel lands, which are incredibly important as cheap interaction in this deck, can be discarded, which also means we get a bird token, potentially even in the opponent's turn, thanks to the Raven Man. So this has been kind of an underrated 2-drop in the deck to begin with, but now with the addition of Rona, I think the Raven Man definitely deserves a spot in this deck. And then moving on, of course, 4 copies of Danik shines in the aggressive matchups like Mono Red, can also discard it in a variety of ways and then still get value from it by disturbing it out of the graveyard. And then every side of it basically has great synergy with Raffine. Growing a lifelinker can also be quite nice, make it difficult for the opponent to race. And if we discard Danik, we're also happy. If we have the Pious Apparition in play and discard a creature, we also get a clue token. So again, can generate quite a bit of value with Danik. And then, of course, Thalia and Skrelv are a nice combo against decks with a lot of spot removal. Skrelv forces the opponent to deal with the 1/1 first before they can take out our more valuable creatures, and can also be helpful in a board stall, giving the protection of the right color essentially to attack past any blockers. And then Thalia taxing all non-creature spells, and as you can see, we don't have any of those ourselves, so it's going to be a one-sided effect. Then moving on to 3 mana, 2 copies of Adeline, which can be a quick way to close out the game, especially when backed up by the right protection or removal to clear a path, as we can make an army of tokens. Also great synergy with the Raven Man making birds, as we can go wide and give Adeline even more power. And then after going wide with a bunch of tokens, it's time for Giggs to shine, as we get to draw a card at the cost of 1 life whenever one of our creatures hits the opponent. We can easily offset that life loss with a Shieldred in play, playing the full playset here as it's such an important card in the deck. Also amazing synergy with Rona, since every time we draw a card we get to gain 2 life, making it impossible for an aggressive deck to outrace us. And then Raffine, as we mentioned, another key card in this deck, has that built-in protection with Ward 1, making it more difficult for the opponent to answer it cheaply, and as a 1/4 it's already kinda tough to handle. And then there's the Clever Conductor, which also has a great synergy with all these draw and discard effects, because whenever we discard 1 or more cards, we exile them from our graveyard, and then when the Conductor dies, put all the exiled cards into its owner's hand. So that can also provide a lot of card advantage, still helps us trigger Raven Man even if those cards get exiled, so that still works out quite nicely. And then, as we mentioned, full set of Shieldred, which will drain the opponent to death even if we're not attacking. And finally, 2 copies of Ertai Resurrected, which can give us an instant speed removal spell in creature form that the opponent may not be expecting, but it can also counter spells, activated abilities, or triggered abilities, especially countering sweeper effects can be important, since of course Skrelv doesn't help against those as much. And then the channel lands also incredibly important. That's also why we have such a high land count in this deck, since we can kind of treat these channel lands as spells that we can often channel for just a single mana, since they get a discount for each legendary creature we control. Ganja dealing 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature, Soaring City as a bounce effect, and then Abandoned Mire can bring back creatures from the graveyard. And then the rest of our mana base also gets to rely on the Plaza of Heroes, which is another awesome land in a legendary deck, as it fixes our mana perfectly and can also be a mana sink to give a creature hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And then to round things out, a few copies of Raffine's Tower. Don't have to play it since we have such good mana fixing already, but playing a turn 1 tower when we don't have a Skrelv will still make it so that we have perfect mana for the rest of the game, so I think a few copies are still worth it. And then the fast lands also nice to have in a low curve aggro deck like like this one, and then a Shattered Sanctum as an untapped land on turn 3 makes sense, as it helps us cast a double white Adeline or the double black Gix, and then later helps with a double black on Shieldred as well. And then yeah, that's pretty much our entire deck. Let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw with a nice hand. Skrelv into maybe a Rona, and then Rona discarding once we play Ravenman can generate our first bird token up against the blue-white soldiers. So this is definitely a matchup where we want to hang on to Eiganjo as removal. Don't really mind seeing Thalia. And the Clever Conductor also quite nice to follow up turn 2 Rona. Skrelv can protect Rona from a Brutal Cathar. The only concern here is an opposing Eiganjo, which they could channel for 2 mana, but that's fine if they have it. Alright, so Skrelv does not help against Eiganjo since it's not white, so Rona down. But it also took up the opponent's turn, so they wasted a bunch of mana. And then now our sequencing is a little bit off, unless we plan to channel Eiganjo, which I guess could also work. In which case playing Ravenman before playing Clever Conductor means we get to actually make a bird token. So that seems reasonable. We've got 2 legendaries, so Eiganjo channels for 1 mana. And we can take out Thalia, even though, as I mentioned, it's not the biggest threat. Just a good, efficient use of our mana. And then by discarding Eiganjo, we also get to make a bird token with the Ravenman here. So that works out nicely. Discarding Danik to the Clever Conductor can be a little awkward since it does get exiled, so we can't necessarily use the Disturb for 4 mana. Now we picked up Rafine, which might be the preferred play. So let's hang on to the Abandoned Mire in case we want to get back our Rona. And then for now, the bird token could attack alongside Ravenman if we use Skrelv, or we can just send the bird. And then discard Danik. So we now have it in the graveyard to disturb. And then next turn I could see myself playing a Shieldred. Make another bird, and going wide is also great with Rafine. There's a Sky Strike, so our opponent can start drawing and maybe block our birds as well. But Shieldred's great at punishing opposing card draw, so if the opponent draws a response we can attack with our birds. So they might actually be better off not tapping their creatures. Attack all out, except for maybe Skrelv. And counters on a bird. Alright, Shieldred can go, Thalia's not too useful, already have a Skrelv. And then kind of want to hang on to Soaring City as a cheap bounce effect. So between Gix and the Clever Conductor, maybe discard Gix, since the Conductor can also synergize well with Rafine. Opponent falls to 8, and then we'll hang on to Soaring City as interaction. Make another bird. Opponent falls to 6 from Shieldred, and they're hopelessly behind. Get to untap. And then by channeling Soaring City, we enable Ravenman, but of course Rafine's also going to help. Reinforcements in response. And make that 2 of them. Don't really see my opponent drawing here in response necessarily, as they would take 2 more damage from Shieldred and have fewer blockers. But they kind of seem dead regardless here to all the flyers. So our opponent's going to go out on their own terms. And our opponent explodes. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. Missing a discard synergy with the Raven Man, unless we maybe channel Iganjo, that could net us an extra bird. Against a red deck, curving Danik into Rafine, and then Shieldred on 4 is going to be quite devastating. Thalia also one of our better cards in the matchup. So not hating our initial opening hand. Thalia versus Danik is an interesting question. Danik is slightly worse if their removal is a lightning strike, but Thalia is a bit more awkward in the face of a play with fire. So I think Danik overall makes more sense. It's gonna be a Swift Spear. And a Strangle, wow, okay. Nice efficient answer here. So, can play Rafine. And then next turn draw with Shieldred gaining a life right away. Another Swift Spear. I guess Strangle would do it, but nope. So now play Shieldred. And attack, gaining 2 right away. At this point, Raven Man might not be necessary anymore. Get that extra +1 counter. And hope at 9 life we're still safe. If Shieldred trades for a creature and a burn spell, that's fine by me. Opponent does get back Phoenix Chick, so that's less likely to happen now. Play with fire goes upstairs, so we should go down to 1, which is not 0. Back up to 3, and now could play Thalia and Gix, could keep up double Iganjo even. So let's see. We would first get to draw for Fiend, so should be safe to play Gix if we wanted to. And then potentially still channel Iganjo as well. Put counters on Rafine, so it's harder for the opponent to block the incoming damage. And then we'll get a maximum number of +1 counters. Gain 4. And then we'll lose 2, but gain 4 more. So that seems worth it. And then don't have an untapped white source to play out here to keep up double Iganjo, but one of them will have to do. And then play tapped shores. So we're at 9 life, have a blocker and a removal spell. So don't hate my chances. And our opponent's facing lethal next turn. And that does it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand's a little slow to get going, but I think it's still a keep. Turn 2 play Skrelv, and then we'll probably pick up some untapped lands to curve out a bit better. Opponent also a multicolor deck. And at the very least, a Rona can give us some card selection. Okay, now probably go for a Gix, attack and draw. Try and hit our 4th line drop. And then once we do, we can keep the shields up with Skrelv. Opponent's gonna pass. And now we've got a couple options. Attacking with both creatures doesn't sound bad. If they had removal, they probably would have main phased it while Skrelv was tapped. Opponent's probably planning to draw with a Bankbuster. They could have a Sweeper in hand for all we know. So let's start by attacking and see what happens. Get to draw 2. Now land is great. Okay, so could double spell my 2-drops. I think I just go for Shieldred. That way if they do have a sweeper, we can get back on the board pretty quickly. Opponent down to 13. Is there a depopulate in our future? Which could have been a reason to play Danik to at least draw an extra card. Nope, just a Topiary Stomper. So opponent looks to be on a 4-color Atraxa deck, with Stomper ramping into the 7-mana Legends Laydown Arms. Okay, opponent's got plenty of planes, so that works. But they still need to deal with Shieldred, even though Bankbuster can be crude now, so gotta watch out for that. But yeah, Shieldred attacks, and then probably play Rona and Danik. Hope there's no Farewell next turn. And I'll hang on to the Abandoned Mire. Channeling it could also trigger a Raven Man. If we get to untap with Rona, we can start making birds. But a sweeper is now the main concern. Land comes into play tapped, so Farewell is not an option. Sunfall is still a sweeper at 5 mana. But no, opponent passes. Get to draw. So now I have the option of transforming Rona if we play out Abandoned Mire. And then we would be presenting quite a lot of damage. And then we'll still have Skrelv for protection. So yeah, let's go for it. Wandering Emperor's fine. So the -2 is not gonna work because of Skrelv.
I'm home.
So it's gonna have to be chumping here with a token perhaps. +1 counter on Bankbuster, I guess, to take out Shieldred works, but then they're still taking 7. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. Rona, great synergy with a Clever Conductor here. And then we'll see if we need airtie or not. Could be up against a mono blue Haughty Djinn deck. Fading Hope to bounce Rona. And then next turn they could try and counter it on the way down. Although at least we get to double spell. Adeline, unlikely to resolve. So, yeah, let's play Skrelv. And then we'll see if they have a Make Disappear or something else. Could just pass a turn, but then of course they could just Impulse and keep digging. So I think we still make them counter here, and then they're less likely to be able to counter my follow-up. There's a Make Disappear. Okay, so I don't think we have enough pressure in play to just pass a turn and keep up airtie. So I'm gonna have to commit a 3-drop. I don't think I want to commit Adeline just yet. Although maybe this is the best window for it, when we can guarantee connecting with Skrelv to make a 1-1. Whereas the Clever Conductor is still going to be fine later. But if our opponent plays a Haughty Djinn or Tolarian Terror, that's not going to be the case. So if they try and bounce Adeline, I've got Skrelv for protection. If our opponent lets us attack, then we are guaranteed to make a 1-1, but then they could still bounce Adeline. Does seem like they have another Fading Hope, but you know, if they Fading Hope here, then they don't get to play one of their 3-mana card draw spells. So I think that's fine. and getting to make the extra 1/1 is relevant. They couldn't counter Adeline, so their hand's unlikely to have many more counter spells. And yeah, Soaring City, potentially a cheap answer to Hodigen, could also just destroy it with Ertai. Can't play 3-drop and channel Soaring City, since we're missing an extra land for it. I think taking out Hodigen is probably safest. And that also lets me attack. And I guess that's good enough for a concession. I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw with a fine hand. Rona into Clever Conductor, into Shieldred could be a nice curve, but if we need Thalia we can play that first. Alright, so against blue-white soldiers probably won't need Thalia as much. Opponent's got Harbin, that is a scary card if we cannot answer it in time. Danik could give us some life gain, but I think I prefer the card selection from Rona and dig towards more of our channel lanes for interaction. So for now, take 4. Adeline's interesting. Think still just gonna activate Rona, play Conductor. And hang on to Aiganjo, get rid of Thalia. So next turn I could see myself playing Adeline and then keeping up one of our channel lines for 1 mana, as opposed to tapping out for Shieldred. Happy to trade Conductor here to soak up some damage. And then activate Rona to pick up an extra card from the Conductor. And the land seems fine. Opponent gets a token in return. And we get to draw 2 cards. Alright, Shieldred's not bad, but yeah, I think we stick to the plan. So Adeline doesn't really set up a great attack because of the veteran on defense. So possible I'm better off playing Danik and then keeping up one of my channel lines for 1 or 2 mana. So I'll activate Rona first. Discarding Danik is also good value, although now we have triple Shieldred. Yeah, I should probably still get rid of a Shieldred here. And then I'll just cast Danik as opposed to Thalia, untap Rona, and pass a turn. Opponent flashes in the reinforcements, so now Harbin is a major threat since they have plenty of attacking soldiers. So Soaring City to bounce Harbin before they get a chance to attack. And there's no waiting to channel in response, because then it's too late. But yeah, still need to find a long-term solution to Harbin, which we currently don't have. And our opponent's just gonna replay it. End of turn, activate Rona. Skrelv doesn't really help us. And Ertai, okay, that's what we needed. So now Ertai to take out Harbin. And then we could also play Skrelv if we'd like. But maybe I'll pick up another land so we can channel Aiganjo instead. Okay, Soaring City number 2. So probably let go of Adeline at this point. Don't see myself making any progress on the ground. And then maybe hang on to Soaring City, play Aiganjo, and then I can flash an Ertai and still channel Soaring City for 1 mana. Valiant Veteran. That happens. So Flash and Airtie, destroying Harbin. And then let the opponent attack and bounce Veteran for 1 mana at instant speed here. To potentially set up an ambush. Can still activate Rona here. Probably don't need Skrelv. And do I trade Airtie? That's probably fine. Opponent will get 2 1/1s in return. But yeah, hopefully another Harbin doesn't show up. And there's a Veteran again. Alright, probably keep Skrelv over Coast. And another Rona. Okay, so make sure to loot first. Discard Danik for value. Play Shieldreds. And Rona can go, since I'm playing Skrelv here to get the extra life gain from Shieldred. And then Rafine would be great too here, maybe putting counters on Danik to gain life. So we'll pass. Got the most amount of blockers back. But yeah, another Harbin could still be lethal. And there it is. Alright, GG's. So, Harbin, I think, the key card in this matchup. We had a few ways to answer it, but opponent found a second copy, and that's gonna end the game here, giving the whole team flying. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand feels a bit awkward. A lot of 3 and 4 drops, double Iganjo. Let's take a mulligan. This feels better. Although, can only keep 6 cards. Probably let go of Skrelv and then curve Thalia into Rafine into Shieldred, hopefully. Even though turn 1 Skrelv can be amazing in certain matchups. If we're up against, let's say, another Esper Legends deck, then Skrelv is not at its best. Against the red deck it can have its moments, but definitely prefer keeping the other cards. So, turn 1 Phoenix Chick. Thalia into Rafine into Shieldred is one of our better starts in the matchup. Double Abandoned Mire could end up being a little awkward, but we'll see. So we're taking at least 2, unless there's a play with fire here. Alright, just a 2 damage. Rona's good too, but Thalia shuts down way more from the opponent here, making all their burn spells more expensive, so they're going to be forced to deal with Thalia first. Just 1 from Phoenix Chick. Thalia holding back Swift Spear successfully. And time to play Rafine. So if Thalia were to attack, the opponent wouldn't be able to play 2 spells at instant speed, so as long as we discard a non-land card, Thalia is good to attack. And at this point Rona can probably go, even though I could see an argument for keeping Rona over Airtie. Yeah, you know what? I don't think we'll need Airtie as much. Mechanized Warfare is fine. Can still block Swiss Spear without losing Rafine, or we can just take out Phoenix Chick, which is probably still better. And then Shieldred should be the final nail here. Counters on Rafine to get it out of range from a lightning strike. Discard Danik is always good value. And now maybe Rona, since Gix could be awesome alongside Shieldred. Opponents at 9. They won't be taking out Rafine anytime soon, and they also need to deal with Shieldred. So, yeah. This is definitely a good example of how the deck can line up favorably against red aggro. And the Festivities, not bad. Takes care of Thalia. And now with Thalia gone, they could still cast another. Can just take 4, even with a Play with Fire, we're not in danger, so just take it. Play with Fire could finish off Shieldred, I suppose. But could be another End of Festivities, Kumano, second main. And can we end the game here? Should be able to, if I don't play anything else out and discard my 2 non-land cards. And that does it, awesome. So yeah, got a nice sample of this new version of Esper Legends, and I'm quite impressed by the addition of Rona in the deck, giving you another powerful 2-mana play that you can keep on untapping over and over, giving you the perfect hand essentially, and then once you're out of plays in hand you can always transform it to start applying more pressure. And then of course the synergy with the Raven Man has been pretty sweet as well. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's gameplay. Wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.